y'all? I am back with a new What's for Dinner. I'm going to be sharing 5 easy but really delicious dinner ideas. I am truly excited to share each of these recipes. Throughout the video, I am going to show y'all how to make the best chicken cutlets. I'm also going to share this street corn chicken chili recipe. One night we did a cookout and I'm going to give y'all my tips on how to make the best cheeseburger. I'm also going to show how to make some really good grilled corn on the cob. I also made a really good queso that night. I turned one of our favorite sandwiches, which is a Cuban sandwich, into sliders and served it with my potato wedges. And then lastly, I came across a really good steak marinade that I'm so excited to talk about. It leaves for the most tender and flavorful steak. So hopefully at least one of these meals appeals to you. Let's jump into it. Up first, I'm making some chicken cutlets. And these were honestly the best chicken cutlets that we have ever had. And the secret is in how you cut the chicken. So instead of butterflying it like you normally would for a cutlet, as you can see, I'm just cutting it into these long, narrow strips for the most tender bite. And as we bread them, we will flatten them out to be similar to the size of a chicken cutlet. And I found this idea from a lady on TikTok. Her name is Rita. She posted a video about it last year and it went viral. I'm sure some of y'all have seen the video yourself. I will absolutely link it in my description box for y'all to go watch. But I saved that video and I said that the next time I make chicken cutlets, I'm going to try out this method. And I promise you guys, it is a game changer. So after I got all of that chicken cut up to a mixing bowl, I'm going to crack in 2 eggs. And she also uses Italian dressing in her egg wash, so I really like the flavor that added. So good. I also did some salt and black pepper to taste. And then with my fork, I'm just going to get everything beat together really good. And then I'm going to start adding in all of my chicken at the same time. And with my hands, I'm just going to get everything coated in that egg wash and Italian dressing mixture. I want to make sure that every inch of that chicken is fully submerged and coated. So in a separate dish, I am going to add some Italian style breadcrumbs. I really like to do this in a pie dish when breading like anything. I just think it makes it the easiest. And also, I don't have any measurements to this. I'm just kind of eyeballing how much I thought that I would need. But I added in some Parmesan cheese and I added in some salt and pepper to this mixture as well as some dried parsley. So just getting all that tossed together real quick to make sure it's all kind of, evenly distributed. And then I'm going to start breading up this chicken. So one by one, I remove the chicken from the egg wash and then I roll it around in the breadcrumb and Parmesan cheese mixture. And as you can see, this is very important. You got to put some muscle into it, just like she says. That way you are flattening it out as thin as possible. And, the whole reason that we are cutting it into those thin, narrow strips is because we are cutting the chicken against the grain. And, that's important with any meat that you cook. As I get older, I have learned how important that is and the difference that makes. And that is why this chicken cutlet, recipe is so special. It's literally giving you the most tender bite possible. So here's all of that chicken breaded up. Such a good way to stretch 2 chicken breasts. And before I fry those up, I'm going to get the side dish started. My family loves this Parmesan cheese pastaroni. So I do 2 boxes of that. So now I'm just whipping out my largest skillet and I'm just adding some vegetable oil to the bottom, just enough to fully coat the bottom. Just a thin layer, as you can see. And, you'll definitely have to cook these up in batches. You never want to overcrowd your pan or they just will not cook up properly, will not brown up the way that you want it to. Honestly, I didn't mind too much having to stand there and do it in a few batches because, since these are so thin, they cook up so quickly. So, I wasn't standing there long at all. And it only takes a few minutes per side. Pretty much when both sides are golden brown, you can about bet that they are fully cooked through the middle. And instead of putting these on a paper towel lined plate, once they're fully cooked, I'm going to do like she does and put it over a wire rack that is over a cookie sheet. That way they will stay nice and crispy. All that grease, like extra grease, can kind of drain down. into the cookie sheet without touching the chicken. I mean, I have done that before, but there is a lot of times that I do the paper towel, method as well, but this one is definitely the best. But yeah, I got 8 chicken cutlets out of those 2 chicken breasts, which I think is amazing. And after each batch came out and they were nice and hot, I sprinkled on some of this Maladon sea salt flakes. I guess that's how you say it. I ordered that box off of Amazon and I've been loving it. It was truly the perfect finishing touch. And then as for that pastaroni, I did add in some fresh spinach that I needed to use anyways. And it was a really great addition to this, a great way to sneak in a few veggies to my kids. And I did give everyone a lemon wedge to sprinkle over the chicken cutlet like Rita does. And I'll use any excuse to use up some lemons and limes. I love anything like citrus, but of course I'm going to show you guys how easy these are to cut into. Like she said, you do not need a knife. They're just so tender and flavorful. Truly such a good recipe. I really hope that y'all give it a try if you've never done it this way. I cannot recommend it enough. I'm so thankful I came across her video. Up next is a recipe that I have been eyeing for several months now. It's going to be a street corn chicken chili. Now, one of my very favorite things to have in the summer is street corn, and just any type of like soup and chili is my absolute favorite thing to make in my kitchen. So the combination of the two really excited me. So to my Dutch oven, I heated up a couple tablespoons of olive oil. I added in about 5 ears of corn that I cut off the cob. I do have a special little tool to do that. I ordered it years ago from Amazon. If I can find it, I will link it. I did cut myself pretty good with it, so be careful if you do order it. I did also add in a few jalapenos that I de-seeded and chopped, and then I just seasoned all that with some onion powder, salt, and pepper. I did saute that down for about 10 minutes before adding in some minced garlic, 2 pounds of ground chicken, and then all of my seasonings. So that's 3 tablespoons of chili powder, 2 tablespoons of paprika, a tablespoon of cumin, and then I just did some salt and pepper to taste. So as you can see here, I'm just getting that ground chicken broke apart. At first, I thought that this was super odd, just combining that raw chicken with the corn and everything. Like, it all worked out in the end, but again, I just thought it was kind of odd at first, but it's truly a one-pot meal, so love that. Less dishes. So I let that chicken cook until it was fully done. It probably took another 10 minutes, I'd say. And then I added in 4 cups of chicken broth, and you need 3/4 of a cup of beer. Now, this is the only one that we had in the house. One of Josh's friends gave him a few of those. I've never heard of that one before. And I also did about a tablespoon of this chicken base. Now, back to the beer. I have noticed that anytime I make a recipe with beer in it, I always get at least one comment from somebody saying that I shouldn't serve it to my kids. But, if you cook with beer, the alcohol cooks out. If you don't believe me, you can do your own research. But, I would never do anything reckless when it comes to my kids. So no worries there. But I brought that up to a boil, and then I added a lid, turned it down to a simmer, and I let it cook for about 30 minutes. And then I came in and added about a cup of some fresh chopped cilantro. I did add in the juice of 2 limes. I'm going in with a cup of sour cream and a few dashes of hot sauce. Here lately, I have been loving Texas Pete. I have so many different brands of hot sauce in my pantry, and I just love that. I like to use different brands for different purposes. This night I was feeling Texas Pete, but I just, simmered that for about 5 more minutes just to make sure that sour cream wasn't like cooling everything down too much, and that's all there is to it. I know that it doesn't look all that exciting, but y'all are just going to have to trust me on this one. It was truly incredible. I'm going to show y'all how I topped our bowls. I did some extra cilantro, some avocado slices, some extra sour cream. I did a good sprinkle of cotija cheese, and then I also crushed up a handful of tortilla chips, and then we've got the lime wedge on the side to squeeze over everything. Truly just amazing. It actually exceeded exceeded my expectations. Like, I knew it was going to be good, but every single one of us just absolutely loved it. We all went back for seconds, and it made so much that we could even have it for leftovers for lunch the next day, and it was just as good reheated. This was such a fun twist on a white chicken chili, and I truly thought it was the perfect summer dish. On this night, we were in the mood for a good old cookout or a backyard barbecue, however you say it, depending on where you're from. But the very first thing that I got started on was making these hamburger patties. So these were seriously some of the best burgers that I have made yet. And I have made many burgers through the years. My second most memorable favorite would be a good smash burger on the Blackstone. That's really good too. But if you're looking for a good classic cheeseburger, then I've got you. I'm going to show you all my tips. So I've added 3 pounds of ground beef into this mixing bowl. I'm using that much meat because I was going to make a few people some plates, some of our family members. And also, I like to use a fattier meat for burgers. This is like 73%, I believe. I don't buy it that low very often, but when it comes to a burger, that's what I want because it's always juicy. I season that meat with salt, pepper, onion and garlic powder, and Worcestershire sauce, and then I mixed it until it was just combined. You don't want to sit there and overwork it. And I just think it's really good to, mix the seasonings in with the meat versus only adding it to the top and bottom. I'm, more recently so learning that, I'd say. Definitely makes a difference. And then I just portion this out as evenly as I could into balls. And then I'm putting it on a parchment lined cookie sheet. I'm going to store it in the fridge that way, but also it just makes it easier to shape versus doing it in the palms of your hands. And then also very important, it's kind of hard to see through the camera, but I'm taking my fingers and making a large impression in the middle of the meat, and then the edges of the meat's kind of curled up like a pizza crust. That is going to keep it from shrinking. I hate when a burger shrinks while it's cooking, but these held their shape better than I have ever experienced before. Super proud of these. So got those covered with cling wrap. Went and set those in the fridge. I wanted to get that done first because that was the most tedious to me. But now I'm going to get started on the corn. So this is some fresh corn on the cob that I shucked and washed. And I got some tinfoil sheets laid out, added a couple slabs of butter, added my corn, and then I went in with some Kinder's Buttery Steakhouse seasoning. Obviously, you can use any seasoning that you want to. That one just kind of popped out to me in this moment. I knew that it would go good with this corn. And then I'm just going to simply fold it up and roll it up tightly. Make sure nothing's open so that butter doesn't come seeping out. And this was the first thing that I popped on the grill, and I just let it cook along with everything else. So now that that's prepped, I'm also going to be making a crock pot queso dip. So this is a little over a half a pound of ground beef. I had that in my freezer. So I thawed it out, browned it up with some onion powder. That cooked up pretty quickly since it was a smaller amount of meat than what I'm used to cooking. But yeah, just let that cook until it was no longer pink. Drain that grease, and then I just simply transferred it to my crock pot. I did spray my crock pot with some Pam first. Here, I'm just adding in 16 ounces of Velveeta cheese that I just roughly cubed up. I'm adding in a half a block of cream cheese, about a cup of some shredded Colby Jack cheese, 1 can of this fire roasted Rotel. I did not drain it. It's got the juice and all. I'm also going to add in half of this can of these diced jalapeno peppers. This one does say hot on it. I couldn't find a mild version, but this dip wasn't spicy at all. It did call for fresh cilantro, but mine went bad super fast, so I had to leave that out. But I'm just going to simply put that on high and let it cook until it is melted and hot. So I'd say about 30 minutes of my crock pot being on. That's when I went outside and got started on the grill. So I am going to be using my Traeger for this. The very first thing I put on, like I said before, is that corn. And then these are the hot dogs that I'm going to be using. I've said it for many years that I pretty much only buy the beef. And that has been true. But here in the last little bit, my kids have just been kind of leaning more towards these regular hot dogs because that's what they get at like their baseball games and softball games, at the stand, the concession stand. So I actually have been enjoying it too. These kind of take me back to my childhood. So these are kind of making a comeback in my house, and I'm not mad about it. It's definitely better on the wallet. I actually like mine on the burnt side as well. How many of y'all are like that too? Here I'm just laying down the hamburger patties, and this is optional. I did decide to add some extra seasoning to the tops and bottoms. I'm using this Steak and Shake burger seasoning. I know I didn't really have to, but I was just really worried that these were going to be under seasoned, just because for the fact that I'm not used to cooking with 3 pounds of meat, so I wasn't sure if I added enough. So I figured a little extra seasoning wouldn't hurt. I did make one mistake. So I'm sure when I got started, y'all could tell that the tinfoil under it had some leftover glaze on it. I should have transferred that out because it started a little fire. I did, of course, turn off my camera. I shut the lid, and then I turned off the grill and yelled for my husband, but thankfully it went out within a minute. I was so worried about it ruining the food, and I'm so thankful that it didn't. Still turned out so amazing. But yeah, everything cooked up really quickly. I added some Colby Jack cheese slices on them. I thought that made it look really nice. So there's the tray with the meat. We've got the hamburger buns and hot dog buns laid out beside it. I did slice up a tomato. We've got lettuce, pickles. I did slice up an onion for my husband and his dad. I was proud of that because if you know me, I don't really deal with onions, but I'm trying to do better. We got the tortilla chips, the perfectly buttered corn, and then here's that cheese dip. The color is a little off in this clip because it's right in front of a window, and just the time of day it just looked kind of pale. But here's my plate, and I've got a cheeseburger that I think looks picture perfect. I've got the corn and the dip and chips. I didn't have any room for a hot dog this night, but I had it the next day for lunch, and it was truly amazing. Everything on this plate was so good. We love grilled food. Up next, I'm going to start this meal off by showing y'all one of our favorite easy side dishes. It's these homemade potato wedges, and this has been a favorite for many years. It wows me every single time I make them. I'm sure I've shared it at least a handful of times on my channel if you go back, but I definitely need to just make these more often, and I say it every single time I show them. But I just start with some washed russet potatoes. I cut them in half, and then I cut each half into about 4 wedges, and then I transfer them to a large mixing bowl. I fill that bowl with cold water as well as some ice. This removes the starch, making for a better potato wedge. I can always tell the difference when they are soaked in ice water versus not. They're always better when they're soaked. So I let those sit for about 30 minutes. Then I'm going to drain them off, and then I lay them out on some layers of paper towel, kind of put them in an even layer, and then I go in with some more paper towels to kind of dab off the top. You want those to be as dry as possible. I'm also going to take that same mixing bowl and the same paper towels and dry that bowl out as good as I can. You don't want any water in there. So now I'm going to add in all of those freshly cut potato wedges. I'm going to drizzle in some olive oil, and I'm going to season them very well with some sea salt, paprika, garlic powder, and some black pepper. Then I'm just going to go in with my hands and toss those to coat to make sure they're all fully coated in that oil and seasonings. They always say the best tool in the kitchen is your hands, so definitely take advantage of that. I dump those out onto a parchment lined cookie sheet, and again I want to make sure that these are all in an even single layer so that they cook properly. Only takes a couple minutes. It's always worth it. Those are going to cook at 450 for about 35 minutes. So now on to the main course. I'm going to be making some Cuban sliders. A good Cuban sandwich is one of our favorite meals. I don't make it all that often, but it still is one of my very favorite recipes. I've shared it a few times on here as well, but I was really excited to try out this slider version. So I started with a package of King's Hawaiian rolls, got those cut in half. I got the bottom portion in a 9x13 grease casserole dish. I did melt down a few tablespoons of butter. I'm adding a little bit of Dijon mustard to it. Didn't want to go too overboard because I have done that before and almost ruined some sliders. That stuff can be pretty strong if you're not careful. I also added in several dashes of Worcestershire sauce, and I'm just going to give that a really good mix until it's nice and smooth. And then I'm just taking my silicone brush and I'm going to brush this mixture over the bottom of the rolls, and then I'm going to take the remainder of that and brush it all over the top portion of the rolls. So I'm going to bring that casserole dish back and start layering it up. So I've got a package of Swiss cheese. I'm going to start with a layer on the bottom. I ended up doing about 5 slices, so that 5th slice is going to get cut in half to fit the sliders perfectly. This is the ham that I'm using. It's just some brown sugar ham. It doesn't really matter what brand or flavor of ham you use. At least I don't think so. But I do recommend getting a thinly sliced type of ham. Even when I'm making just like a normal Cuban sandwich, I do prefer to use like a thinly sliced ham. I just think it makes it better and kind of lets the pulled pork shine, which I'm going to show here in a minute. So here we go. Here's the pulled pork that I'm using. I made this back in the fall time. The recipe is in my fall favorites video, and I made a big portion of it on purpose, and I froze the leftovers in these vacuum sealed bags. That way they could, stay fresh when I go and use them. And I've made several different things with it. This was my very last bag that I had in the freezer. And this was one of the main things that I wanted to use it for. And I wish I'd done it sooner now. But I just kind of took my hands and broke that up better since, it has been vacuum sealed. In here, I'm just taking some pickle slices. I didn't do it to all of them because I knew my son wouldn't eat the pickles. But he actually ended up not even trying the sliders, so I ended up having to make him something else anyways, and that really doesn't bother me, to be honest. But I did another layer of cheese, and then I popped it in the oven alongside the potatoes for about 5 minutes to kind of melt down the cheese. And meanwhile, I am working on the buttery topping that goes over the top rolls. So I melted down about 4 tablespoons of butter, and I added some onion and garlic powder, some poppy seeds, and some sea salt. Pull that from the oven. I'm adding the top layer of rolls on, and then I'm just going to start brushing on the top butter mixture, and then this will get covered with tinfoil, and it will go back in the oven for about 15 minutes with the foil on, and then I took the foil off for just a couple more minutes. Here's what those potato wedges look like when they get out of the oven. I like to flip them all over because the bottom side always looks nicer. Now, of course, when you're cooking them, you could always flip them halfway through, but I pretty much never do that because I'm always just so impressed with them. Just, doing it all in one go. It's more of just the way it looks type of thing. No matter what, they always come out so tender and flavorful. At this point, I did drop the heat of the oven down to 350, which is technically what the sliders are supposed to be cooked at. Since I was cooking them alongside the potatoes, I did cut down the cooking time. But here those are once they are fully done. I let them sit for about 5 minutes before I sliced into them. Here is my plate. I have got 2 of those sliders with a good portion of the potato wedges, and this whole meal was just truly incredible. These Cuban sliders also exceeded my expectations. Again, I knew they'd be good, but these were like brag worthy. I cannot wait to make these for a party. So good. Last but not least, we were in the mood for some steak. It's been a while, and Kroger had their strip steaks on sale. There's no way I would ever buy steaks at full price, or really anything for that matter. I like a good sale. But as you can see, these are big and thick, so we only need 2 of these for our family of 2 adults and 2 kids. This is a little over 2 pounds of meat, which once you see it sliced up at the end, you'll see that it actually makes more than you'd think. So I got this recipe again from TikTok, and that video will be linked down below in my description as well. But she showed how she prepared her steaks, and I saved it immediately because I just really wanted to give it a try. So basically, she pokes holes in her steak, covers it in Worcestershire sauce, and she said to get this Uncle Chris gourmet steak season. So I immediately bought it from Amazon. That's the only place I could find it. It's not sold in any stores around me. So I added a really good layer of that, and then I'm just going to get that steak flipped over, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm poking holes all in it. Not only is that going to tenderize it, but it's also going to allow the seasonings and the sauce to kind of seep all in throughout the steak. So layer of the Worcestershire sauce and another layer of that seasoning. Now, she said that her dad will marinate this in the fridge for like a couple days, I think she said. I did do it in the morning, so it was able to marinate for several hours, and I moved it to the counter at least an hour before I went to cook it. I always do that no matter what method of steak I'm doing, just so it can come to room temperature. So there's they look like once they've marinated all day. And that dish above it is just some broccoli that I put some butter and seasonings into, let it cook alongside the steaks. And I ended up cooking it for about 10 minutes on that first side, and then once I flipped it, I let it go for about 8 minutes. I've noticed with this Traeger, once you open that lid, the temperature drops really quickly, so that's why I kind of had a longer cook time. But I used a meat thermometer to make sure that I wasn't overcooking it. So here's what they look like once they are done. I immediately took it in and topped it with some butter, and then I tinted it, yeah, with some tinfoil. And I let that rest for a good like 6-7 minutes, I'd say. And then here's how I like to slice it. I cut it in half to make it in more manageable pieces. Then I turn it and start cutting it against the grain, just as I talked about with the chicken. That way it can be as tender as possible. And for us, that color is absolutely perfect. This is exactly how we like our steak. And let me just tell you, I'm so glad that I saw that video, because this was so flavorful. I love the marinade, love the seasoning. So I served it with some mashed potatoes and broccoli. I actually sat down and started eating it until I realized that I forgot to fill my plate. So that's why it looks a little wonky, but yeah, this meal was so good. Now, that is going to wrap up the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.